And now, the lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Good evening, folks. Good evening, and welcome to the lowdown. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to the lowdown. Obviously, you guys are in for a treat. You're going to see me with glasses, a rare treat. So you're very lucky here tonight, viewers. You're one of the few people that's been able to catch me with glasses over the years. So you're in for a treat. Thank you for tuning in tonight, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the lowdown. Share the link. Let's give everyone a chance to see this show. Let's give everyone a chance to take a look at what we're going to be talking about tonight here on Issues in the News. We're going to cover a wide range of things that have come up over the course of the past week or so in Guyana. Very interesting issues. So share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's give everyone a chance to see this show. Let's give everyone a chance to be here. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday night. Thank you for starting your Tuesday night on a high with Elson Low. So share the link, folks. Share the link. It's good to be here with you. I've got on glasses. Clearly, that means that we've got a special show tonight. Share the link, folks. Folks, we also want to remind you that if you'd like to contribute to the PNCR or to the show, you can contribute right at via Cash App, right at the name that you'll see at the top of your screen in green. That's going to be $ Aubrey Norton GY, capital A, capital N, capital GY. So you're free to contribute via that particular name there on Cash App. We'd be happy to get any support towards the furthering the party's efforts to, first of all, get back in government, but second of all, represent the average Guyanese. Also, you can support the show. So share the link, folks. If we can get some donations in there as well, we'd happily appreciate that. But let's give everyone a chance to be a part of the show tonight. Let's give everyone a chance to see it. We've got some interesting topics that we're going to be covering here tonight. You know, we always say that we have interesting topics, but we always look to provide you with the best, viewers. We always look to provide you with the best. So share the link, and we'll get rolling. We've actually got a couple of different areas we're going to be looking at today. One being that we're going to look at some housing questions that have been raised. That's one thing. We're going to look at the question of what's going on with electricity in Guyana. Folks, I don't know if you were party to a blackout during the day today where the power went off and then came on again and went off again. That's not the first time that's happened of late, and people have been crying out about the electricity situation in the country. So we're going to talk just a touch about that. We're going to talk about cost of living, and actually we're going to talk about some of the first signs that we're seeing that the cost of living crisis may persist into next year, which is really unfortunate. But we're already seeing some signs that may indeed be the case. It's actually being something that we're seeing in England and in the international oil market that we've got to keep an eye on, folks. We got to keep an eye on that. So share the link, and we'll get rolling in just a minute. We're going to talk about education as well tonight. We're going to talk a bit about the government spending in education. Of course, we mentioned this in a previous show. We want to continue to talk that conversation. And actually, folks, I'll be going on MP Natasha Singh Lewis's program maybe next week. And there we'll have a rich discussion on education. She's the shadow MP for education. And so she, of course, has many interesting thoughts, many engaging thoughts, many thoughts that come from her experience. And so we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to try to bring some of the statistics that I share with you here on this show as we have that conversation, and hopefully it will yield really some good insights for you viewers. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be going on MP Natasha St. Louis's program. That's Mondays. I believe it's Mondays from 6:30 to 7:30. I believe it's called Building Bridges. So we're going to be building some bridges right there, folks. We're going to be talking about education. We're going to be talking about some of the important statistics that are not being talked about on a national level. But we bring you the best research, we bring you the best information right here on the lowdown. So we're going to talk about that later on in the show, but we're going to start off covering a couple of different areas. And then we're going to talk a bit about the cost of living crisis and the oil price and what we're starting to see in terms of predictions for next year. Of course, you know, as the year wears on, you're going to start to get your predictions. We're in October, so there's 2 more months. So people will be starting to get better information about what next year may look like. And so that's why we may be seeing some predictions for next year, how it's going to look with cost of living, how it's going to look regarding the oil price, the potentially very high oil price that we may actually see next year. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, folks, let me give you a last share the link. Folks, you know that we love to have ourselves 1 or 2 memes of the week here. We love to have ourselves 1 or 2 memes of the week. The first thing will be a meme. The second one will be probably something that's more concerning, but I think is a bit unsurprising sometimes when it comes to what's going on the PvP. So we're gonna start with that first meme of the week here, folks. There we go. If we could get that up. And from there we're gonna roll on in and get things going. Okay, so someone is saying somebody could ram into the bridge again. This traffic is terrible, folks. You know that we had a very severe disruption to the traffic flow from West Coast, from West Coast Demerara, which is really unfortunate, where people were not able to come over with their vehicles and work. So they had to take a boat or something, which is, very, very, very difficult, very unfortunate. But that's something that we observed, and which really raises a question around whether we should have just one bridge, whether there should be more than one bridge. Of course, there's a new bridge that's being built. So those are questions to be had, whether the other bridge should remain, and I believe that we've been hearing that it will remain. So that is something that I think is very important. But one thing that we wanted to point out to you viewers, as you continue to see traffic levels high, as you continue to wait on this bridge to be built, is this. Viewers, you'll recall that the coalition had done significant studies on a bridge, going as far as designing one, and that the bridge was actually ready to roll. The bridge was actually ready to be activated when we left office. So they could have taken that same plan and tendered and immediately began building that bridge, and that bridge would have been completed already, folks. We would have had a bridge that would have been completed. A new bridge would already have been completed, because these projects take about 2 years or so. We've gone past that 2-year mark. We could have already had a bridge. Instead, the government said that they're going to redesign the bridge. Of course, they've put forward their design. Okay, that's fine. But what has also happened, and folks, we don't want you to forget what's been going on, folks. We don't want you to forget. Do you recall that a contract was signed for a Chinese company to build the bridge? Folks, do you remember this? A Chinese company contract was signed for them to build the bridge. They were going to finance it. Then all of a sudden, pulled out, weren't able to finance it, and we had the government had to go to another contractor to build this bridge. So that was something that has actually caused the delay, perhaps of about a year, in the building of the bridge. So, folks, we started off by saying that a new bridge could have been built 2 years now. It could have been finished already. But we've also got an additional delay for this other bridge that is now going to be built. So it's, what's that, 3 years delay with citizens not getting access to a good bridge? Folks, unnecessary delays. Wow. So when we hear citizens say, "Oh, the traffic is so bad, what's going on?" When you see a disruption with the West Bank not being able to access Georgetown, people not being able to come to work, just keep in mind that This bridge could already have been built. There could have been more than one way to get across the Demerara River. But instead, the government decided to go their own way. And in the process of going their own way, they also delayed the actual building of this bridge, perhaps by as much as a year by some estimates. So there's also a delay on that front. Could have already gotten started on it. Could have already gotten started on it, folks. And of course, we must ask why it is that this bridge contract had to be retendered, or rather that another company had to, a group of companies, I believe, had to take over this bridge tender, why it is that the original company wasn't able to meet the standards. That's a question, of course. There's been an allegation that Sue, Sue, folks, Sue from the Vice News investigations, that he's somehow involved with the bridge, but we don't want those allegations to just be out there. What we're saying is we need to see investigations into all Sue's activities to ensure that he has not been having an impact on various national development projects. You'll recall that Sue had mentioned that a bigger bribe was paid for the Amale Falls hydroelectric project. Folks, we don't know whether or not Sue paid such a bribe, but these revelations, I believe, do indicate that we need to have an investigation. And in any other country, you'd have had endless investigations. You would have had endless investigations. But folks, GT, living in GT, life on the dam, Guyanese would say, life on the dam. So unfortunately, as a result of that, we are left here waiting for this investigation to find out what's going on. And if Sue has been involved in various other elements of Guyana's infrastructure projects, we don't know. An investigation is a way to find out. So just a little note for you folks as we confront the fact that we've got that one bridge, which is really the only artery across for vehicles, or really the only artery across vehicles. Very difficult, very unfortunate, something that needs to be addressed, and it's very unfortunate that we've seen a 3-year delay in the building of that bridge for very little reason, viewers, for very little reason. So that's the first thing. The second thing is less of a meme, more of a concern. Let's throw the next one up here, folks. Let's throw the next one up as we continue tonight. So there we've got someone who's thrown what would appear to be building materials on a road. This is Middleton Street here in Georgetown. And you've got a poor man in a wheelchair who has to push his wheelchair around, has to maneuver his wheelchair on the street around a huge heap of mud and building materials. Folks, I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, it is not legal to block roadways. It's not legal to block roadways. I could be wrong. It could be that I don't understand something. But the fact that a person with disabilities had to go all the way around that is really unfortunate. But this is if it is indeed lawlessness, because, hey, maybe I'm missing something. But this is generally the type of lawlessness that we're accustomed to under the PUP, isn't it? Isn't this what we're accustomed to under the PUP? Random acts of lawlessness where people think that they can do anything and there's no issue, even if it's people who are vulnerable that are affected. One other thing I noticed today, which some people have spoken about, is private folks with sirens. This is something that's been mentioned before, and I noticed it twice today. I was kind of thrown off. 2 folks. I don't believe that these are official vehicles with the sirens there. Yeah. They're just flashing their lights to tell you to move out of the way. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I looking at right now? This is the type of lawlessness that you see on the PUP. You feel that they can do anything. There'll be no accountability. And I'll give you an interesting point. If you don't see investigation, when allegations are as serious as the allegations made by Sue, you don't see an investigation, then you can understand why people would be engaging in all manner of lawlessness, because they obviously think to themselves that the rule of law is not taken seriously in this country. That is the implication of that the rule of law, is that the rule of law is not taken seriously in Guyana. That is the implication, folks. Folks. This is the unfortunate thing that we have to confront in this country. Under the PUP, the rule of law is often just eroded, and folks just think that they can do whatever it is that they feel like they can do. And of course, I know that some people may say, what does it matter? Why do you keep talking about Sue? What do you care about this issue? Folks, I'm just gonna point you in the direction of another thing that's linked to Sue, and you can make your own minds up about this. Let's get the next slide up as we continue. So we got another issue here. So this is where someone is indicating that someone is indicating that, man, the in Lithium they've had some trouble with their electricity up to now. Lithium Power Inc. has not issued a word, and people are expressing their frustration that they're not hearing from this company that is supplying electricity in Latam. So, of course, we would be happy for the company to get a chance to explain what's going on, why they're not hearing, why people aren't hearing from the company regarding power in Latam. But the electricity issue is just a broader issue, isn't it? Isn't it a broader issue? Folks, we've got here just today blackout, more than one blackout. The lights are cutting off and then coming on, then cutting off again. And you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, what is going on? I mean, hey, maybe the Lethem Power Company has been doing a good job and this is not accurate. It could be, but given the state of electricity generation and distribution across Guyana, you have to ask yourself what is going on. We've seen a single post be hit, and the whole of the Demerara Berbice interconnected system, the whole of Guyana almost, except for certain areas, out of power. And you're asking yourself this: how can we be living in a society where the slightest thing, someone jams a pole, the slightest thing, and you're out of power? I mean, for the entire country or most of the country is out of power. Just the pole is damaged. Folks, is this really how we intend to operate? And I'll tell you another thing. We've got projects like the Gas Assure project and so on that are supposed to generate additional electricity and cheaper electricity prices and so on. But folks, are we really going to keep the same flawed system in place to distribute this electricity? Are we not going to upgrade our grid and review it the way it needs to be upgraded and reviewed? Folks, we're going to have electricity generated, hopefully, supposing that project works out. Knock on wood, I don't know that we can assume that yet. We are going to have the same blackout problem in this country. Is that seriously what's about to happen here? We're going to continue to have blackouts like this. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. But please believe it or not, folks. That's what we gotta be concerned about. And I'll tell you something interesting. We heard Sue say, paid a bribe for Amalia Falls. That's what Sue has indicated. Needs to be investigated, of course. But folks, if that is true, this is hypothetical, of course. If that is true, do you understand that means that the reason that the country has been focused on Amalia, which is a wide range of problems with it, and not focus on things like revamping the electricity grid so that we can stop these blackouts and having all the forms of stable power, is because it could be that a certain person who, the bald head, wears glasses, name rhymes with Magdio, has been taken up right from Sue this whole time. They realize that that's the implication of that allegation. Now, this is why we need to see an investigation, because it would mean that the reason that you're having all these blackouts is because of that same bald-headed man who wears glasses. Folks, we need an investigation. We need to find out what the truth is. We don't know what the truth is, but we need an investigation into this, because these are very serious allegations that have been put forward. Very serious allegations that have been put forward. We need investigation so that we know what the truth is. That is highly, highly concerning. It could be that the real reason we have all of these blackouts is because corruption is at the heart of it. So we may say, Sue, what are you talking about, Sue? Doesn't matter. Why do you care so much about Sue? But I say this to you, folks. I say this to you. Maybe if we didn't have a Sue, we wouldn't be having blackouts. folks, it is not easy out here. It is not easy out here. These are some of the concerns you have to deal with. Things that truly unbelievable things. But these are the things that we have to be concerned about in Guyana right now. But on the question of possible corruption and investigations that need to be had so that we know what is what, of course, we don't know whether these things are corruption, but if we see something that's strange, we can reasonably call for an investigation to ascertain what the truth is, to find out the truth. Let's get the next slide up here, viewers. Just want to talk about this from the perspective now of housing. Issues in the news, we cover a wide range of issues on this show, wide range. So we've got here a post I put out, which is, I said, should this be investigated for procurement fraud? Old fancy steel house is 8 million. I believe it's 8.5 million for those of you paying attention. And it's being built in 6 weeks. Whereas this wooden house is a cool $14 million, folks. $14 million. Folks, you'll recall that it cost just about $4 million for a 2-bedroom low-income house that's made of concrete, much less wood, that the government has produced. So that's one starting point. Let's say that building material prices have increased. I'm pretty sure they haven't tripled. So we know that a 2-bedroom house can be built for $4 million. We know this. Let's at the most 5, let's say. But let's take it to the next level. Let's look at a modern house. Let's bring up the next slide. There we go. This is a house that was advertised recently. I believe it's the Hits and Jams folks are saying this. So they are saying they've got a prefab house, a steel house, $8.5 million. Throw it up in 6 weeks. They're saying, oh, you can get this done. Folks, if this is 8.5 million, let's jump back to the previous image. You mean to tell me that this wood house cost nearly twice as much to build as that steel house that looks very modern, folks? Cost nearly twice as much. This wood house. Well, my. What kind of wood they building with there, Mount Purple Heart? What is going on? How can that house cost twice as much, nearly twice as much as the other one? And folks, the other one, I mean, we don't know if these folks this is indeed the case. I don't know. I would have to check to see whether indeed they can build this house in 6 weeks. Give them the benefit of the doubt. But folks, if they can build that in 6 weeks, look at that modern house. Look like it's in America or something, right? Modern. And this house, which looks like, I mean, to be fair, nothing particularly spectacular, costs nearly twice as much, and it's made out of wood. It's not some modern fancy material or something. That's a metal house with a fancy, with unusual materials. This is a normal wooden house that's being built, and it costs nearly twice as much. Yeah, look at that house. That looks like a house in the States. $8.5 million. Many people can't afford that in Guyana. That's the way the things are. Can't afford that. But when we look back now at the house that the government is saying that they have now commissioned is $14 million. $14 million. And we know that they can build a low-income house for $4 or $5 million. Even if the price of materials doubled, it would still be way short. Folks, these are the types of things where you need to see investigations to identify whether or not there's been procurement fraud. We don't know that there's been fraud. We don't know that people have been shorting the government and engaging in corruption and taking the government funds. We don't know that. But we need an investigation to find out whether that has been the case. Because these are the types of things that are very concerning. Very concerning. Folks, if this house realistically costs, let's say that it costs the $8 million that the other house costs. Let's say that it costs that, folks. And you've now paid $14 million for this house. $40 million. That means that you've paid $6 million more than you were supposed to pay. $6 million more than you're supposed to pay. Folks, that means that that house is 75% more expensive than it's supposed to be. It's 75% more expensive than it's supposed to be. We got a whole steel modern. Look at this house. $8 million for this. 2-bedroom as well. I check as a 2-bedroom as well. And when you go back to the government house now, that's $14 million. So you're paying 75% more for this house than you are for a modern house. 75% more for that. This is why you need an investigation to see whether or not there's procurement fraud that's involved in these things. Because these numbers don't add up. I don't know how it is that house could have cost that much to build. Now, folks, maybe price of wood is incredibly high. It could be that, I mean, look at all these modern fixtures. This house doesn't look like it has any modern fixtures. What is going on? What is going on here, folks? Hiya, hiya. Look at that, folks. This is really concerning. It could be that this house is 75% more expensive than it really should be. 75% more expensive than it really should be. It could be that the government has been defrauded of millions of dollars. We need an investigation to find out what is going on. We need an investigation to understand exactly what is going on, because this doesn't make any sense. Maybe the house is built entirely of Purple Heart, high-end Purple Heart, and it has high-end finishing, and the inside you have hand-carved walls. Maybe that's what's going on. But unless I see that, I don't know what to think. But I do know that an investigation is called for. All right, folks. So that's just another flavor as we continue to talk tonight. We've always got these interesting things that we got to discuss as the nation goes on. Folks, you've caught me on an unusual night with glasses on, so save this one. You'll hardly see it, but we've got to keep talking. We got to keep rolling on, folks. So many issues to cover, so little time, so many issues. We're gonna bring on a short video. It should be about a minute or so, a short video about oil prices here. We're gonna bring that on in a minute, because we want to get the conversation rolling. Folks, we've said we got to understand oil the way that we understand rice, the way that we understand bauxite, the way that we understand sugar. We got to understand oil. We got to understand the implications going forward. We got to understand the implications going forward of what we see in the oil market, both in terms of the nation more broadly, but also in terms of your lives, your direct lives and livelihoods. We have to see what is going on in the oil market. We have to understand the oil industry, because it's going to have a huge impact on your life. It's a huge part of the economy, majority of the economy at this point, and we've only just started. So we're going to bring on a video right now.
Says a decision by OPEC Plus to cut oil production is a clear sign the group is aligning with Russia. The oil cartel led by Saudi Arabia announced a cut of 2 million barrels per day, the biggest such slash in production since the start of the pandemic. The decision will likely lead to higher gas prices at the pump. President Biden is expected to order the release of 10 million barrels of fuel from reserves to try and stop that from happening. The national average for regular gas is up 7 cents since last week.
All right, thank you, viewers, for just sitting through that short little tidbit. But we want to break some of this down. Of course, we folks will have their own agendas. Will have their own foreign policy takes on everything. We don't really want to get into who's aligned with who and who's doing what. We're not particularly interested in that. That's a tale for another time. But what we are interested in, what we do need to think about, we do need to talk about, is what's been happening with the oil market, what's happening with the oil price, what we should anticipate for next year. And I'm going to link it to some of the cost of living issues that we've got in mind in a second as we continue this conversation. I'm going to make that link for you, and that should give you some perspective here that will, be very useful. But what we've heard there is that OPEC, which is the group of countries, petroleum-producing countries that work together essentially to regulate what they believe that the price should be for petroleum on the international oil market. And what they do is essentially they'll increase or decrease production. So they may increase production if they want to bring the price down, and they may decrease production if they want to bring the price up. What we saw is them indicate that they have now decided that they're going to do a very large cut to production. And that is a 2 million barrels of oil cut. For context, we've seen them do 100,000 barrels cuts, maybe a 500,000 barrels cut. But this is a big cut, 2 million barrels of oil, a very large cut. And what it has meant is that oil prices, which were in a decline, still very high, but were in a decline, have stabilized and have started to head back up. Now, really what we should interpret from this, we should grasp from this, is that OPEC is signaling that they want to keep oil prices high. Okay, if they were going to let things continue as they are, maybe oil prices would fall. If they were to let things continue as they are currently, they could have said we're going to continue the same amount of production. They could even have said we're going to increase production and let oil prices come down. But no, they've indicated they want to keep oil prices high. So we must ask ourselves, what does it mean that they want to keep oil prices high? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for us that they want to keep oil prices high? Because it has two meanings, folks. It has two meanings. The first is, and this is, well, I guess it's three meanings now that I think about it, but the first is that it means that Guyana will, supposing that this trend continues, again have a year with very high oil prices. Okay? The Saudis and the other members of OPEC, Russia, and so on want to keep oil prices high. That indicates that Guyana will also benefit from the high world market oil price. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the inflation, the high prices that we've observed, will not go down and will not see prices fall, but we'll see prices remain at these high levels because a lot of inflation, a lot of the high prices is tied to petroleum production and the petroleum price. So to make that more concrete for your viewers, let me to understand how that exactly works. When you think about the transport of goods, it has to make use of, unfortunately, quite a lot of petroleum, right? Gas. You got a gas in your car to transport your goods up and down town. Now, if your gas price doubles on you, and we've seen gas prices do that, if your gas price doubles on you, then that means that that element of your costs has gone up it's gone way up. And so you're going to have to pass those costs along to your consumer. That's where we're seeing high prices. One of the reasons we're seeing high prices. Another reason you might see high prices, however, is that petroleum is involved in the production of many other goods that are important. So fertilizer is one area where you're going to see petroleum production, because petroleum production is involved in fertilizer production, many different ways. That fertilizer price go up. And we've seen fertilizer prices go way up in co with oil prices. So the price now for food, for greens, for things that we grow locally, will have to go up even though we don't actually import them, but we grow them here. We'll still have to face these higher prices. That's because the input, the fertilizer that we're getting from abroad, that fertilizer has increased in cost. And so it is not that the farmers necessarily want to charge you more or anything like that, but rather that their costs of, first of all, the fertilizer, and second of all, the gasoline have gone up. We've seen the government say that they're going to give away $1 billion worth of fertilizer. We understand that measure, and we've seen them roll it out, even though I believe it's been rather slow to roll out. We've also spoken about wanting to provide vouchers to canter operators and minibus drivers and so on to ensure that they're able to actually access lower cost fuel, so that we don't see, particularly for lower income individuals and so on, the cost of food go up and the cost of transportation go up. We want to keep those things low so that low income people are not affected heavily by that. So those are things that we've said. We've actually seen the government, and folks, we have to take credit for this. We've seen the government cut the price on guy oil, of gasoline. We've been calling for them to bring the price of gasoline down and to keep it at a moderate level, so as to ensure that we mitigate some of the negative effects of these higher prices. One being inflation, the second being that it can slow down economic activity because people are discouraged from driving as much as they would like to drive. In general oil and gas parlance, we call that demand destruction. High prices cause fewer people to be willing to go on the road. So those are the things that we've talked about, and the reason that we believe that these are important questions really to look at when you see the high oil price. But the other thing, of course, is, folks, when the oil price is high, country has more revenue, country is able to spend more, country is able to do more to mitigate cost of living issues. And so we want you to understand that when the oil price is high, it's not just that you have to take the cost of living issues and feel the pain, but rather the government's capacity to help you is much greater. That's what's really been so annoying for many people about the government this year, is that they got an unexpected 60 billion or so of additional revenue, 60 billion Ghana dollars of additional revenue, 300 million US, because of the unexpectedly high oil price, and it remains very, very elevated. And they have not put much of that at all towards assisting Guyanese, hardly anything towards assisting Guyanese. So that is where you've kind of got this situation where, on the one hand, the country is benefiting hugely from the high revenues, but on the other hand, the country is not doing anything to help people with cost of living that is substantial. Really, 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 really concerning, folks. Really concerning. And what we're kind of getting a sense of is that the early signs that the Saudis and the other OPEC members, Russia and so on, OPEC, I shouldn't just keep saying the Saudis, OPEC wants to keep the oil price high, which means that prices for many goods in Ghana will remain high, which means that the government will continue to make very high revenues. So we've got to have that in our head at all times when we look at the situation in the country. That's the key thing. But the other thing that we should note is, we've talked about December 4th, which is just about a month or so, a little bit away, which is when there's going to be a bit of a showdown over the oil price because there's additional sanctions that are going to be put forward on Russia. So we'll have to see how the oil price reacts. If it reacts by Russia's refuse to sell oil to those countries that are enforcing the sanctions, you may see a very sharp and prolonged spike in the price of oil. That's one serious question. Now, with this production cut, it means that there's less oil in the market. So if the Russians now cut by 3 million barrels of oil, that's going to be on top of this 2 million barrels, which will mean that's now 5 million barrels that is not on the world market. And so you can see that will cause prices to really be out of control. We've spoken about the need, if prices go to that level or out of control to that extent, for us to have a conversation with the oil and gas companies regarding a windfall, some additional revenue that the government can get, whether it's through royalty, whether it's through an additional tax, because we would have a very severe cost of living crisis on our hands. The oil companies would be making huge amounts of money, and we would need them, I think, reasonably to be flexible in terms of assisting the average Guyanese to weather that storm. And that is, of course, something that has been raised internationally, in many countries, one of which is the United Kingdom. And that will serve as quite a nice segue for us to talk a bit about the United Kingdom. So we got 2 slides here we want to go through that will give you some perspective on what people are kind of already projecting for next year and even the following year, which is not the best news, viewers. Let's get the first slide up here. This is one from the UK. Okay, so the IMF warns that the UK will face rising prices, and it'll be particularly bad in the UK. Now, the UK, there's a lot of debate around some of the economic policies that are going on in the UK right now. Of course, we don't want to necessarily get into whether they're bad or good policies, but the IMF has indicated that there's a risk that those policies might drive higher inflation. And that, of course, is very concerning. But there also is, I think, something very subtle here, which is that there seems to me to be an assumption that energy prices will remain high. Let's get to the next slide and see if we can tease out some of this. So what they're also saying is that they expect that inflation in the United Kingdom will come down a bit, but right now it's extremely high. It's 11.3%. So inflation in the United Kingdom is at some of the highest inflation in the developed world, and that in each of the next 2 years, it expects price rises will average, that's inflation, at about 9%, far above the Bank of England's target of 2%. Now, the reason that this is very, very concerning, viewers, very concerning, is this. That's a projection, first of all, for a very, very high inflation rate for the United Kingdom, which can't only be due to United Kingdom specific problems. It implies that they may be thinking that inflation for many countries will be very high next year. But it's a projection for 2 years. So they seem to be indicating that they think that inflation will be very high for maybe 2 years now in the future. We've recognized the IMF has shifted some of its guidance, and One of the things they said is that we need to have targeted measures, not just some of these one-off measures. Folks, you know the people loves a one-off measure. Their campaign slogan is one-off measure. We've spoken about electricity, an electricity subsidy for those at the lower end of the income scale, to ensure that they are able to weather this very difficult time period. We've spoken about efforts to bring down the price of gasoline and also to bring down the price of food. We've spoken about things because we recognize that times are hard. We at the beginning of the year saw the Ministry of Finance. Can you imagine this? Can we heard them say that I think it's going to be 4% inflation? Folks, we obliterated that 4% number like it was nothing, and it's looking like it's going to be closer to 8% inflation, maybe 9% inflation. Let's see how the year goes. That, of course, assumes that you don't have an escalation at the end of the year, which we're also already seeing a lot of bubbling notions around this, which could cause even higher inflation and higher prices. So this is very concerning for the average consumer. I think this is very concerning for the average consumer. It means that next year you may see very high prices. You may see very high prices for a prolonged period of time next year, and that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. It's going to mean the government needs to take more robust measures. Government needs to follow our advice more frequently. Of course, they followed our advice in terms of bringing down the price of gasoline. It's going to mean that the government's going to have to take some serious efforts. But it will also mean this, viewers, that the government will have revenue to deal with the cost of living issue. It will mean that the government will have revenue to deal with the issue. So there's not a situation where there's nothing that can be done, which is what the narrative that they like to paint. There's nothing that can be done. There's nothing that can be done. Folks, we heard the BP say that nothing more could be done about the gas price. And then we saw them cut the gas price at Guy Oil. Folks, you can't take these people seriously. You cannot take the BP seriously. So when they say next year nothing can be done about the high inflation and cost of living woes, you just have to kindly say, don't believe you. What you're saying makes no sense. Please go and do what this is supposed to be doing and stop trying to fool people, PvP. Because this, nobody takes you seriously when it comes to things like this. How can you say nothing more can be done about gas prices and then go and do exactly what we suggested that you do? Folks, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. But anyway, so we're seeing the first indications, number one, of a high oil price next year, and number two, of high inflation, high cost of living next year. So we got to keep an eye on this. And hopefully, of course, we see things ease, or at least the government take the appropriate measures so that people are living comfortably. Of course, we would like a high oil price. Everyone's happy with that in this country. That's great. We're making lots of money. But what we want is that we have the appropriate measures so that Guyanese are not suffering from the fact that there's a high oil price, which to me is wholly absurd and ridiculous beyond measure. Ridiculous beyond measure. How can you have the country making excess money, making huge amounts of money, and you as a government say, oh, we've decided not to help people? I mean, woo! Folks, you can't make this up. You can't make this up. We're gonna switch gears now and round off the night with a little conversation on education. And to that end, we've got a video here for you. We're gonna look at that and make some comments on that. And then we're gonna close things off with an eye towards next week, where I'm gonna be on MP Natasha St. Louis's show to discuss education, to discuss what's going on with the PvP and the way that they're just all over the place. But first, we've got a picture of the tents. Do you recall the tents they've been putting these students in? Before we get into that video, we got a picture of that. Oh, there we go. Looks like a boot camp, man. Look at that tent. That's rough. That is rough. Hey, no offense to the company that provided it. I'm sure it's appropriate tent for certain events, but it does raise a question as to whether it looks a bit gloomy. At least on the outside for children. That I think is a question to be asked. Folks, how can it be that we've got all this money being made? Guyana's, everybody wants to be part of the fancy, the bright future that Guyana's got. Everybody wants a piece of this pie. But our own citizens have to go to school in tents. Goodness me. we want to instead think about education not in terms of just getting by, but in terms of what's the best possible outcome that we can have. And so we're gonna look at a little video here about education in Finland, which has historically had one of the best education systems. Lots of high-tech software companies have come from Finland. So let's throw that up, and we'll have a chat afterward.
It's 8 a.m. on a cold morning in the suburbs of Helsinki, and these primary school children are getting ready for class. This morning's lesson, ancient history.
Well, they are reading with pairs some text about Egyptian ancient life. They are reading, and then I'm going to ask something, what did they find out from the book? I think we all are ready now.
This is a school system that for years has been among the world's best.
And then what about this gold one? Yeah, Minttu, please.
Ja miehetkin molemmat on käyttänyt meikkiä.
And yet these kids will spend half as much time in a classroom as Australian children.
When you go to the first grade, when you are 7 years old, the amount of hours is 20 hours a week. It's the minimum. And then it gets more hours the older you get, but it's still less than in many countries in Europe or in the world.
In Finland, it's individual teachers who decide how the curriculum is taught, including how much technology should feature in their classrooms.
Me tehdään sellaista pyramidiprojektia, missä nyt me kirjoitetaan hieroglyfeillä meidän nimet paperille ja sitten me tehdään classroomista tehtäviä.
11-year-old Minttu Latomaki asks to leave class to work at the school's own student-run cafe.
You can go. Yeah, that's okay. Shut your books down.
Hello. One cake for the cameraman, one cake for me, and 2 coffees. How much is it?
€2 and 60 cents.
How much change?
€2 and 40 cents.
Ketos. Perfect. Is there a tip jar? Do you have tips? No tips. Okay. In Finland, school lunches, like books and excursions, are free. The kids select what they want, sit down with their friends and teachers to eat before they clean up after themselves. The children rug up again to play outside. Some play a raucous version of soccer, some play basketball, while others wait for the hockey rink to open. There are plenty of options for bad weather days too. The facilities in this school are just amazing. Outside we saw an ice skating rink, and in here where the kids can play at lunchtime, there's a ping pong table, a pool table, and in here for the cold winter days they've got a room full of beanbags and couches, and there's even a PlayStation in the corner. It seems like it's such a rich school, you must get more money than other schools.
No, we don't. It saves money for everyone, actually. They take and borrow books.
In Finland, schools are not allowed to raise private funds or to charge fees from parents. All schools are equitably funded from taxation.
And in our system, everything is free for the students, actually. We don't collect any money from the parents.
We want our schools to be equal and have the equal opportunities to arrange the education. So therefore also the finance system need to be equal and treat equally all the schools.
Ja sitten tuossa tulee 16.
Minttu Latomaki's older brother Levi is in year 7, and this afternoon he's got maths.
We have like the last chapter before we have the next exam.
There are regular exams in Finland, but the results of these tests are not published and shared.
We have national tests, but the big difference is We don't compare schools that this is not good school, this is bad school. We just use the information that we evaluate ourselves.
But perhaps the single biggest difference in Finnish education is the standard of teaching. Levi's maths teacher, Una Arnes, speaks 5 languages and has postgraduate qualifications.
So every one of us, we have to have a master's degree to be teachers. So like, for example, me, I'm math and chemistry and physics teacher.
In Finland, a career as a teacher is highly sought after.
To enter the studies in university, actually, it's really hard. They take something like 10% to study teaching. If you really want to be a teacher, it can't be your second or third or I don't know what kind of option. It has to be your first.
I believe that they know what is the best for our children. I'm not a teacher, I don't have that education, so we don't interfere their work.
In Finland, there's little anxiety about finding the right school for your child.
We trust that they have very good school, so we don't need to do any research work or...
I think that is not a question in Finland.
Finland is a vastly different country with a tiny, homogenous society. But its education success must surely offer some lessons for Australia.
I would like to say that try to build the system that you trust the people.
And its investment in teachers seems an obvious place to begin.
The society respects the teachers. It means also the parents respect the teachers and they don't question the teachers. And that's in Finland a really huge thing.
Okay, folks, thank you. Thank you for sitting through just a few minutes as we looked at the Finnish education system. Some things you may like, some things you may not like. A couple of things that I think jumped out that are important things. First of all is the question of free lunches. That's something that we've mentioned needs to be implemented more widely. We've seen the PUP copy our plan that we put for breakfast in school. Those are the types of feeding programs that need to be much more widely adopted to improve attendance, to improve learning outcomes, and those types of things. That's one thing I thought was interesting. Another thing I thought was interesting is teachers there, master's degrees and so on. Of course, I don't know that that's something that we can realistically accomplish. But what we can do is to encourage teachers to learn more, further their studies. And we can encourage them by offering them student stipends and so on, which is something that we've already talked about. Really, they seem to see teaching as a vital profession. What we want to do is to ensure that teachers always feel that they're in a vital profession and make sure that they're supported. That's something that I think is important to us in the PNCR, important to us in the coalition, to ensure teachers feel that they're supported so they can do their jobs and produce good education outcomes for us. And building off of that, actually, one thing that stuck out to me, which I thought was very interesting, is this. Very interesting is this, viewers. They mentioned that the schools are very equal, so you don't even have to worry about which school your child goes to. Now, of course, we do have various schools, the historic top schools, that have resources, that do well, that receive subventions. And we can understand that. We have students who are very capable at those schools. What we want to do is, and this is something that's been spoken about by the leader, we want to ensure that the other schools in our school system, the other high schools in particular we're talking about here, are able to receive enough funding to perform at a level that's appropriate. Because if we talk about raising the math pass rate from the paltry 34% that it is this year, and even bringing it beyond the 43 or so percent that we had it under the coalition, we really will have to focus on ensuring that the other schools, not the top schools, are able to perform. The top schools, we can continue, they'll take care of themselves. Of course, you continue to work with them to improve. But the other schools is where a lot of work will have to be done. I'll tell you something that's interesting. In most of the top schools in Guyana, for math, the pass rate is really 90-something percent, 80-something%, around those rates. For the national pass rate to be 34%, let me say it again, viewers. Bishops, QC, these are the top schools. Pass rate in maths is 90% often. For the national pass rate to be 34%, Does that not mean that the non-top schools had to have had a pass rate in math that was a good way below 34%? So their pass rate may have been as low as like 16-20% in math. Could easily have been that low. Folks, it's not that the pass rate at QC and Bishop and Joseph and Roses and so on is 50% and the national pass rate is 34%. Their pass rate is like 90%. And if the national pass rate is 34%, to drag the pass rate so far down, it means that the other schools have to be performing way below that 34%. A substantial amount below that 34% to drag it that far down. Because if you're starting off with 90% as the average, and you fall all the way to 34%, it means that you had a very low number, way below 34%, probably 20%. This is an alarming thing that we see in our public schools, our high schools that are not the top schools. And a lot of effort will have to go into addressing these issues. So viewers, we want to give you that perspective as we go forward. But we're going to have a much more in-depth conversation on education next week. Tune in on Monday evening. I believe it's at 6:30 for or 6:30 to 7. MP Natasha St. Louis's program. I'll be on there to discuss education with her. Keep an eye out. You'll receive a notification. Last thing I wanted to address, viewers, and some of you may have seen my letter rather in Kaichor on Monday, may have seen my statement on my Facebook page. I was due to debate another economist. Well, I shouldn't say an economist because he's not an economist, a financial analyst, I believe, Joel Bagwandin. Of course, that debate didn't come off. But what I've indicated is that I think that it is important for us to have open debate in this country. I am someone who's very much in favor of open debate. And I think that that is a cultural practice that we should try and inculcate in Guyana, rather than not having different views come in conversation with each other so that people can evaluate for themselves what it is that they believe. And so that has been my focus. I, of course, spent time trying to get former President Granger and then candidate Ali to debate. I was not successful in getting that debate to come off, but I worked along with civil society organizations to try and get that debate to happen. And what I would suggest is that civil society organizations take that mantle on so that we can have sort of an objective platform. Some of these platforms are not as objective. That can allow us to have regular, stimulating, robust debate around national issues so that people can, the average Guyanese, regardless of their political affiliation, can determine what it is that they believe is correct, who is actually correct, who has got a good reading of the facts, and who will really drive the country forward. And so many of the insights that I bring to you on this show, I'll bring forward to the public in that forum. And hopefully Guyanese will then be better informed as they make their choices going into the next election and going forward in the country's history. On that note, folks, thank you for tuning in to Lowdown. Always good to be here with you. Thank you for starting your Tuesday night on a high with Elson Low, and we'll catch you again on Saturday.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.